Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 38 of On the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jody Lai, and I am the editor-in-chief of AutoTrader.
And I am Dan Alika. I am Whoa.
Did you forget your name?
Yes.
And your title?
AutoTrader's road test editor. Let's just pretend that didn't happen.
Usually this happens to me. I can't get sentences out properly, but for some reason, you're infected now.
You know what? 37 episodes, and now we're into the 38th. I'm entitled to a little slip-up.
That's true. I'm at like 10 slip-ups already, so you're already doing pretty good.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So today, Dan and I will be talking about our favorite top 10 underappreciated cars. So these are vehicles we think we really like and are very good for various different reasons, but for some reason don't get the love they deserve in terms of sales or, from other media and such. So this is kind of a fun...
Yeah, it's subjective. This isn't like the last one, the last episode was discontinued cars. That's objective and just fact-based. This one is, vehicles that Jody and I have driven, have had exposure to that we're like, wow, this is really good. And it was actually born of a certain car that I think we're going to talk about first.
Yeah.
That I was driving, and I loved it so much that I was like, Jody, return the car that you're driving early so that you can take this car from me for a few days because it is so good. I wanted to share the love.
Yeah, and Dan said that this was the best car he had driven all year.
All year.
Which is such high praise coming from Dan because he drives like dozens and dozens and dozens of new cars every year. So
should we tell them what it is?
Dun, 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 dun.
The Toyota Crown. So,
and everyone's like, what is that?
Yeah, I think even people at Toyota are saying that. So it is a sedan. The Crown, yes. The Crown name has been in use in other parts of the world, namely Toyota's home market of Japan, for a very long time, since like the 50s. The Crown used to be sold in North America, in Canada, and the US, but it went away in like the mid-60s or something like that. So there is just like no cachet here. People don't know what it is. It doesn't really make sense to bring a sedan, to the market when everybody wants SUVs these days.
Right.
But it is just so well executed. I think it's so well built. Everything about it.
It was very smooth and comfortable and insanely efficient. It was so efficient. So it only comes as a hybrid, and it comes standard with all-wheel drive, which is very cool.
Yeah, and it's so there's two versions of the hybrid powertrain. There's like a strictly like efficiency first one, and then there's what Toyota calls like a hybrid max powertrain, but it pairs a turbocharged engine with some electric motors, so it's a little bit more of a performance one, but it burns way less gas than, an equivalent, like what you would normally expect from a car like that. It's super well built. There's all kinds of great stuff in terms of like features and amenities, and it's so cheap. Like,
it was surprisingly affordable.
So the one that we tested was so there's only two trims in Canada. There's the XLE and the Platinum, but then the XLE you can add a limited package. So the one we had the limited package, and it was like $53,000 before tax. It's like a bargain Lexus.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It's super quiet, super smooth. Suspension's great. Everything about it I loved, except the headroom.
Right.
It was hilariously crazy, especially in the back.
In the back,
I was like sitting with my neck twisted.
And so like we really liked it, but why don't people know about it, and why didn't it get a lot of love? I think it's because that like it arrived really quietly, and there's been no advertising around it, so like people just aren't aware that it's even here.
I think like this was one of those like Akio Toyota was on his way out, and went, we're building this car, we're going to sell it everywhere, and then like all of the regional divisions of Toyota had to say yes.
Yeah.
So it came here, and it's like, well, okay, it's here now.
I mean, it's interesting, too, because, like, obviously a lot of people like SUVs now and crossovers, and so to bring a sedan, but it is kind of an interesting-looking sedan. Like, it's kind of like a jacked-up sedan.
But it's not. The funny thing is, that's all visual. It actually has, I believe, I could be wrong, I think it's a little less, but either way, it's in the same ballpark in terms of, like, ride height as the Camry.
It's interesting because it looks so much more like upright and
Yeah.
taller than a traditional sedan.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I dug into it a bit, and they're very similar, but I think the Camry has actually a little bit more ground clearance.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's just like super cool. I dig it. It's funny because in the last episode we talked about the Nissan Maxima going away. I honestly think you could rip the Toyota badge off of it and tell people that was the next gen Maxima, and they'd be like, checks out.
Yeah, I
like
could
it
see
has
that.
look. Which isn't, I wrote this in the review. It's not an insult to either brand or either car. It's just one of those cool, it proves that it doesn't look like anything else in the Toyota lineup.
It is very unique.
Yeah.
Not only doesn't it look like anything in the Toyota lineup, there's nothing in the whole like industry that looks like it right now. And it's funny because when I was driving it that weekend you gave it to me, I kept like, Chris and I kept saying like, I like it, but I also don't like it. Like there's something weird about it. But it didn't take away from the fact that it was just such a solid, good car.
Yeah, super underappreciated.
Very much so. The next one I kind of put on this list, it's the Mitsubishi Mirage.
Yep.
And so I know a lot of people make fun of this vehicle because it's like very cheap inside and outside. Like it's a tin can of a car.
Yeah.
But here's why I think it's underrated. First of all, it's the last vehicle in its class that is standing. And
Yeah.
I really love these very affordable new cars because it opens up the possibility of new car ownership for so many people, students, new immigrants, all sorts of people who need affordable transportation. And there's a certain like honesty to that car that I can really appreciate.
And we have a friend who, Clayton, owns
He
one,
bought
and
one.
he loves it.
I drove one maybe like a year or two ago, and it was super efficient. It was
Yeah.
actually very fun to drive.
You loved it.
I loved it. It was
You hopped
so
out
fun.
of that thing feeling so chuffed, I remember.
And it was bright yellow, so it was like a very cheerful car, and it had no features. It had a crank key, like really bare bones. But I think there's room in the market for stuff like that. And I'm really sad that, it's the last one available.
Yeah, but yeah, I'd say that's an underappreciated. And that one's different. Like the Crown is like, it's underappreciated, but it's like, I wouldn't say it's like people are doing themselves a disservice by not knowing about
Right.
it. But the Mirage is one of those cars where it's like, if you are in the market for a vehicle and you're not looking at the Mirage, especially like you said, if you're, in a situation where affordability matters most, then yes, you're getting a warranty on this, fun little hatchback that you can get with a manual. That's a good car to
Yeah.
learn stick.
And it's great because it has no features. That means there's less to go wrong, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just so many things that I think this Mirage brought, and it always gets dumped on because it's so cheap. But like that's its job, is to
Yeah.
be cheap. And if that's its job, it's nailing it.
It's doing it well. Next up is one that was like, we talked about this because, okay, it's not underappreciated by us, which I mean is kind of the theme of this. This won Best Overall Truck in the 2023 AutoTrader Awards. The Ford Maverick. I think it checks so many boxes for so many people. The one big one that I will never, well, maybe not never, but as of yet, I hold Ford responsible for, just like really blowing it on this one, is that you can get it with a hybrid powertrain, but not with all-wheel drive. It's the same hybrid powertrain that you can get with the Ford Escape. And I asked Ford, why no all-wheel drive with this hybrid? And the spokesperson got back to me and said, there is nothing from an engineering perspective stopping us from offering it. It all comes down to customer demand. And my thing is this: how the hell are customers supposed to know it's an option? They're not going to demand something if they don't think that the car company can build it.
But it's also like, this is Canada. The take rate for all-wheel drive is like, what, 80%? Something
astronomical.
like that? And so for them not to offer it in all-wheel drive, I feel like was really kind of dooming it from the get-go. Because it's so good and it's so efficient and it's like very clever truck.
I told you, we had this, Jody and I had this conversation in the office a few weeks ago where you just asked me, like, if you had to buy a new car, because I love my Golf wagon. I'm not planning on getting rid of it anytime soon. But you said, if you had to replace it tomorrow with a brand new vehicle, something realistic, not, just like whatever.
Yeah.
something that like made sense financially and fit your life and whatever, what would it be? And I kind of like, I thought about it for a minute and I was like, I think the Ford Maverick, but with the caveat that I would want the hybrid all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Because I look at that and go, I could get a tailgate pad and put my bike in the back and be able to take it riding. You know, it's got enough space for me. I don't have kids, so it's not like I have to worry about all kinds of room. You can get a cap for it. Like there's lots of, it's a versatile vehicle. I like it more than the Hyundai Santa Cruz, which is like a similar compact pickup truck. And the hybrid just makes so much sense. But yeah, I would want, it's one of those weird things. I'm not saying, oh, it's a truck and it needs, you know, to be a 4x4, but it's like, it to me should be all-wheel drive, especially because I've driven the Escape hybrid and it has had no penalty on. It's different. Toyota uses a dedicated electric motor for the rear wheels in its all-wheel drive hybrids. The Ford setup is the same mechanical all-wheel drive system that you'd get in a gas-powered Escape. But for whatever reason, it's just like got a whole bunch of magic working and it's crazy efficient. You drove the Maverick hybrid and burned next to no gas.
Yeah, I was getting like 5.9 liters per 100 kilometers,
insane.
and that was in the winter on winter tires.
It's insane. So that to me is kind of the perfect vehicle in my books to replace my Golf wagon, but without all-wheel drive, it does not make sense to me.
Well, especially for you because you take it on trails, like nothing too hardcore.
Yeah, but I go camping with my buddies, and you need like a little something to get to these remote spots. The other thing I'll say about the Maverick, so this year Ford launched a Tremor package, which has become sort of like the off-road package. It's like a step above the FX4, but it's not a Raptor. It's just kind of like a little bit more. It's got some extra off-road goodies. But for whatever reason, so you can only get the Tremor package with the gas powertrain. And I think it has to do with the rear differential that's required for the all-wheel drive system. You cannot get the maximum tow package with the Tremor package, which to me is so bizarre because if you've got a couple dirt bikes or something like that, and that's why you want this Tremor, is to both look the part and be able to go to like some off-road park somewhere. To only be able to tow 2,000 pounds with it is so dumb.
Maybe they're just doing it on purpose to force you to get a bigger truck, like get an F-150 or something.
I think it has to do with that rear differential, but like Ford, when I asked them, they were like, yes, that's true. And I was like, but that's not what I'm asking you.
They didn't give you a reason.
And then they went, yeah, but you can't get the packages together. And I'm like,
okay.
What a weird, do not look behind the curtain. Like it was very Wizard of Oz and bizarre.
Very strange. This next one I know you'll agree with.
Yes.
We think every minivan is underrated.
Absolutely.
And so I grew up, like my family had minivans growing up and like.
Tell them the story about your dad being ahead of the game with the VCR and the TV.
We had a VCR in our minivan, and for my parents, it was like a godsend because we were so quiet during our family road trips.
And this wasn't like, the point is that
this was like in the early 90s.
Jody's dad, good old Francis Lai, he was a Renaissance man of the in-car entertainment. And he kind of, cobbled this setup together before you could buy a dedicated.
Yep. And it was just the coolest thing. But also like minivans are so practical. It's got sliding doors, so your kids will never ding the doors when they're getting out and getting in.
Do you like that I called your dad Francis the
His
Renaissance?
name is Frank.
Yeah, but as a minivan Renaissance
it
man,
makes sense.
It's a little classier.
Yeah.
It elevates it just
I
that
like
one
it.
step further.
I'm going to tell him you said that.
Okay. Wait, don't tell him. Just get him to listen to Own the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple
actually
for Canadians.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But yeah, I don't know why people are so hung up on minivans being uncool.
I think it's like that whole thing of rejecting what your parents, thought was. But it's funny because it's like you look at fashion these days, and it's
true.
like all this like 90s, what was laughed at is now like cool. And it's like, I don't know, but we saw the same thing kind of happen with wagons.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's really, honestly, I say it every time I review a minivan, like the only person or people you're doing a disservice to, it's you and your family by not considering a minivan.
Yeah.
There are still there aren't as many options as there once were, but all of them have their merits.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's only 3 of them left now. The Sienna, the Pacifica, and the Odyssey.
No, and the Kia Carnival.
Oh yeah, the Kia Carnival.
Yeah.
So there's 4 now. Yeah, and they're all great. They're all so practical.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for a family vehicle where you can actually comfortably fit 7, 8 people and all their stuff, you can't go wrong with a minivan.
No, they're amazing. I have growing up, we had Caravan was like the first. I think that's what my parents had when I was born, which was like the first minivan. And then we grew up with a Chevy Lumina, which was just awesome. I loved it.
We had a couple. We had an OG Mazda MPV, I think they called
those
it
were
at
so
the time.
cool. Yeah.
We also had an Odyssey at one point. We had a Sienna at one point. Oh, no, sorry, it wasn't a Sienna. It was the Previa?
Previa.
We
The
had one of
Eggvan.
those, yeah.
Mid-engine.
That was so cool.
That's wild.
It's funny, though, because my dad couldn't pronounce Previa, so he just called it the Pifu.
I mean, it works.
I always thought it was really cute.
love going to Japan and seeing how much love there still is for vans there.
Yeah, they get it.
There's so many options, and tiny ones and big. Anyways, it's.
I love those little tiny minivans. They're so cute. With the little stumpy nose.
Yeah,
very cute.
Little K vans. Anyways, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, don't get us started. We could talk about minivans for a long time. I think the Kia Niro is very underrated. I like the Niro because right now you can get it in 3 different models. You can get a hybrid, a plug-in hybrid, and a full EV.
Yep.
I think that people aren't really sure what it is. Like, is it a hatchback? Is it a crossover? It only comes with front-wheel drive.
That's definitely hurt sales here.
I think so, but I still believe you don't need all-wheel drive. And so I think that's why the Niro is so underrated.
I should also talk, I just drove the EV, and I averaged 15 kilowatt hours, per 100 kilometers. So, when you look at a gas-powered car and the, you're burning however many liters per 100 kilometers, in an EV, you can do the same calculation and say this is how many kilowatt hours of the battery pack you're burning for every 100 kilometers you travel. It is officially rated for 18.6 combined.
Wow.
And I drove like a ton of highway.
Which is typically a lot less efficient.
Yeah, for an EV. Yeah. And I averaged 15. I was blown away.
That's insane because I was just driving the Toyota BZ4X, which has the worst name ever.
Yes, it does.
But I was getting like 19 or 20, and I was like, wow, that's so good. And then you were over here getting 15 with no effort at all.
Literally none. I was just doing my normal stuff. Also, just taking a step back to what you just said about the BZ4X being the worst name ever. Is it worse than the Alfa Romeo Tonale? Otherwise, when you read it, you're like, oh, this is the Alfa Romeo Tonale.
The Tonale, yeah.
That's a bad name.
It's bad for a North American audience.
Of course.
Because, nobody knows what that means in Italian. And no one will actually go, Tonale. No one will actually say it like that.
It's a toenail.
Very, not very thought out decision.
It's very
from
bad.
Alfa Romeo.
It's funny because we've had this discussion with some of our contributors who are French, and they've talked about vehicle names, and we ran a story a couple years ago about vehicle names that were changed because the French, they either didn't translate well or the actual word in
was
French
something
was
offensive.
So that I understand, Alfa is really big into its heritage and spreading that, but to me it just doesn't, because when you just read it, it's toenail.
And it's
phonetically
gross.
it's toenail.
Gives you the heebie-jeebies.
Ugh, the ickies. Ugh.
I mean, their other names are beautiful, like Julia. What a beautiful name for a car, right?
Yeah. I like that. What
Stelvio.
a beautiful name for a car.
Stelvio, also a great name.
Yeah.
Toenail, not into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
But Alfa Romeos aren't underappreciated, are they?
No, I think they're I think Alfas are cool. I think there's a cachet and that, whether it's the Italian thing or not, there's a certain
They drive very beautifully.
Yes, but they're just they're there's something, they're fussy.
A little bit problematic. Yeah,
they're fussy,
to be,
and they always
to
have
be kind
been.
about
Didn't
it.
your dad just recently buy an old Alfa?
He did. He bought a
Yeah.
1993 Alfa Romeo Spider. He found it on AutoTrader, actually.
Smart man.
He hasn't been able to drive it yet because, of course, it has oil leaks that they have to fix. But it's bright yellow. It only had like 2 owners. It has like 60,000 kilometers. It was beautiful.
Yeah, they're cool. I've always liked them, but yeah, it's a bold choice to buy. I'll tell you this. I would lease a new Alfa Romeo.
Yeah.
I would not finance one.
That's probably a wise decision.
Like,
It'll
it
be in the
just-
shop most of the time.
Yeah. Speaking of cars that you can lease and not buy, how about hydrogen cars? There's underappreciated.
Okay, I can see that. So hydrogen cars, in theory, very smart idea.
They're
you know?
genius.
Hydrogen only takes like 5 minutes to fill up a tank, so equal to gas. Its only emissions is water.
Yeah. It's
So
literally
it's
like
very
water
clean.
vapor coming out of the tailpipe.
So, but the downside is that there are no refueling stations. Basically, I think there's like 3 in the whole country or something.
I think it's, in fairness, I think it's 6.
Okay,
but
well.
it's something crazy like, one of them is in the Metro Vancouver area. 4 of them are on Vancouver Island. And then there's 1 in Quebec. Those are the only Now,
Yeah.
there are some commercial hydrogen fueling stations, and there are hydrogen powered trucks out there that you can get. But from if you're looking at personal vehicles, publicly accessible hydrogen stations that have the proper connector and you can fill and pay for what you've used, yeah, there's only like 6 of these stations. And that also means that there's only currently 2 hydrogen fuel cell vehicles that you can buy, the Hyundai Nexo and the Toyota Mirai. And for a while, you couldn't. I think the Mirai you've always been able to buy, but I think the Nexo, at first, you could only lease it.
Yeah.
So it was only available to residents of BC, and it was a lease only. And now you can buy them, but still, there's just no infrastructure, which means they're underappreciated kind of by default.
Yeah, they'll never take off because it's already too late. I think.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
It's a big bummer because I really would love to see hydrogen, take
Yeah.
the lead over electric vehicles.
Well, because it has all the benefits of an electric vehicle and very few of the downsides, which
Yeah.
is the long charging times, right? But also the infrastructure is just non-existent, so it will just never happen.
It's a big and the same apparently is true to a lesser extent, but it's true in the US as well. Like California, there's a bunch of hydrogen fueling stations, but between the western and eastern coasts, like you're not, it's not like you're gonna find one in like Nebraska,
Yeah.
So it does become really tricky. But I think, they're underappreciated because nobody has a chance to appreciate them.
That's, well said. Here's something more fun. Cadillac CT5-V Blackwing.
What a car.
Before the Toyota Crown, you thought this car was the best car you'd driven all year.
Was that this year?
I think it was this
Wow,
year.
time
Or we might have
flies.
been late last year.
Well, either way, it is a really good car.
Okay, so this vehicle is a supercharged V8 rear-wheel drive, manual transmission, beast of a car.
It's amazing, and it's super it's affordable. Now, I don't want to
Yes.
say it's not like
For what it
50 grand.
is.
It's something like, I think now this year it's let's say mid 80s to start, and of course you can add some packages and stuff. But
Yeah.
if you take a look at a comparable BMW, like an M5 competition, it is like tens of thousands of dollars less for something that is has so much personality, and just when you're, as Jody would like to say, it turns you into a real ghoul. Ooh, spooky. Anyways, no, it's a real weapon. It's just a rocket ship,
and a delight to drive.
Oh man,
so
it's
engaging
so
on
good.
all different levels too.
Yeah.
And it's very luxurious inside,
Yeah.
which was great. And it's very special. It has a certain amount of prestige, but it doesn't get enough love. I don't think I've ever seen one in the wild.
I've seen a couple.
Yeah.
I like the subtlety of that too, though.
It's a sleeper because you don't know it's capable of so much if you're just looking at it.
You have to know. And I remember the one that I reviewed, I was sort of, I don't want to say bummed, but when I saw the build sheet and I was like, oh man, another black sedan as a press car, I'm like, I just, you kind of want something colorful and fun, but it came together so well with the carbon fiber packages that
so
were
sinister.
added, and the bronze wheels and the matching brake calipers. Like everything about it was really, really awesome.
Yeah.
But it's underappreciated. Again, sort of like hydrogen cars, like kind of by default, because it's like, who is going like, oh, I've got 90 grand to toss around and I could buy some.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's probably somebody's like third car.
Yeah.
But man, it's so good.
And like guaranteed that's going to be a collectible one day.
And then another one that I drove, recently-ish, and was like, not enough people know about this, is the Mercedes E450 all-terrain.
Oh, the wagon.
Which is a wagon. It's like, the all-road from Audi, where it's like a little bit... Think about it like this, to put it in kind of mainstream terms. It's Mercedes' version of a Subaru Outback, is the best way to put it.
Yep. So you get all of that extra capability and ground clearance and body cladding, which will protect you out on the trails, but also like very luxurious, very comfortable ride.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And it's so the current version of it has an inline six with a mild hybrid system. So it's like a silky smooth powertrain. But that is one of those cars where I think, and it also comes with, whatever you want to call them, but like jump seats in the back, like the reverse facing.
Really?
Yeah. So it's like super cool. So it's kind of, if you don't need a 3-row all the time, but every once in a while, I don't know, you bring some like your kids' buddies to the movies or something like that. They can sit in the back and they get to face out the back window. Like it's a super cool vehicle.
Oh my God. My best friend growing up, their family had a Ford Taurus wagon with the jump seats, and every time I got to ride in those jump seats, it was like the best day ever.
Yeah, it's super cool.
So I'm so surprised to learn that the E-Class still has that. That is so cool.
Yeah, so that is one, and I am going to say something bold before we get to our question here, our Ask an Expert. Don't get me wrong, the AMG version of the E-Class wagon is super cool. The all-terrain is cooler.
Boom.
Mic drop.
mean, it's a lot more practical.
Yeah.
And probably more efficient.
And just like, I don't know, there's something cool about it, like, because you can buy, like, I don't know, the Audi RS6, for example, is out there. And yeah, Audi makes the all-road of the A4 and the A6, but there's just something about the E450 all-terrain that kind of stands above the rest.
Yeah,
and
it's classy
I
too.
think it's super cool.
Yeah. Cool. Before our Ask an Expert, here is a message from our friends at AutoTrader. Save time and money by using AutoTrader, Canada's most trusted place to buy and sell new and used cars. AutoTrader has the most cars, and one of the best features is price badging, so you can feel more confident that you're getting a good deal. Today's Ask an Expert question comes from Rudy.
Hello, Rudy.
Hi, experts. I have a motorhome and I've been towing a car for about 10 years now. It is getting older and starting to wear out. I'm trying to find a replacement, but I do not want to spend money on a new vehicle. I have a 36-foot RV and a gas V10 Ford engine, so I don't want to tow too much weight. What would you recommend? So, Rudy, you're looking for something small, fuel efficient, and light that you can tow and do some quick runs into town while you're out with your RV. And it has to be used and affordable. And
it has to be a Nissan Micra. I really think
Great
that's
choice.
my genuine recommendation. It's good because it's front wheel drive. So if you want to, just use a dolly, great. You can throw those under the front wheels and the rear wheels will just spin freely. If you want to put it on a trailer or inside an enclosed trailer, it's a small car, but it's really good.
Very light, super efficient.
And they were, they don't sell them anymore. Nissan doesn't sell it anymore, but it was affordable when it was new. Yes, prices are, higher than they once were, but still, if you're looking for just a cheap, easy, I think it's kind of the perfect car to slap on the back of an RV and cruise around.
Perfect. I love that answer.
Yeah.
I love the Micra. What an underrated vehicle.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a way to bring this episode full circle.
Thank you, Rudy, so much for your question. If any of you have questions you would like to ask Dan or I, you can email us at expert@trader.ca. And that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and drive safe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.